Most people sit down next to a stranger in a diner and hear nothing. They look at their phone. They eat their food. They are present in the way that most of us are present, most of the time. Physically there, elsewhere, in every way that matters. They hear the words coming from the next booth, and they let them pass through, and they go back to their coffee and their reasons for being wherever they are. But Hank Mercer was not most people. And on a Wednesday morning in April, in a booth at the Silver Creek Diner on Route 11 outside Branton, Virginia, he set down his coffee cup after 2 words came through the vinyl partition between his booth and the next one, and he did not pick it back up for a long time. 2 words, spoken not to him, spoken to a phone, to a voice on the other end of a call that was clearly not going the way the woman making it had hoped. Spoken in the specific tight register of someone trying to keep something from the room. "He'll back tonight." He heard the pause, and then the next 4 words. Quieter. The words she had not planned to say out loud. "And I'm scared." Hank Mercer was 47 years old and had been on roads his whole adult life and had learned to recognize a great many things from a sentence or less. He recognized this. He set down his coffee. He thought about it for 30 seconds. Then he reached into his jacket and took out his phone. What happened between that moment and dark would change a driveway in Branton, Virginia, into something that a man in a pickup truck was not going to be able to drive past. The Silver Creek Diner sat at the junction of Route 11 and County Road 4, which was the kind of intersection that exists in Virginia's Shenandoah foothills, specifically to give travelers a reason to stop before they commit to the mountain roads heading west. The diner had a gravel lot wide enough for 10 trucks and a covered porch that smelled of the honeysuckle growing up the post on the south end, and inside it was the inside of a place that had been feeding people since 1967 and had no intention of changing what was working. Counter with 6 stools. 8 booths with red vinyl seats, the kind that had been replaced twice in 60 years, but always with the same color red, because it was what the place looked like, and the place knew what it looked like. The coffee came in heavy white mugs and was refilled without asking by a woman named Darlene, who had been working the morning shift since 2004, and who had the specific efficiency of someone who had long ago memorized every variable in her environment and accounted for them all before they became problems. On a Wednesday morning in April, the diner ran at half capacity, the way it ran most weekday mornings once the early crowd cleared out, a farmer at the counter with the paper, a couple of highway workers in the second booth, a woman alone at the table by the window working on a laptop. And in the last 2 booths before the hallway to the restrooms, separated by a partition that was acoustic in theory and not in practice, a woman on a phone call and a man with a coffee mug and a road map spread on the table that he was not reading. Hank Mercer had been riding since before sunrise, coming down from Harrisonburg on Route 11 through the early mountain fog, heading south toward Roanoke for a chapter meeting that was scheduled for 2 that afternoon. He was 47, broad across the chest, with the kind of stillness that large men develop when they have learned that the way they occupy a room has an effect on people, and they have decided to be careful with it. His vest said Iron Ridge Brotherhood, Virginia. Below that, Sergeant at Arms. He had patches that other patches gave way to, and a face that had been arranged by a hard previous decade into something that had come out the other side of hard, and was not afraid of much anymore. He had stopped for coffee and the road map, because the mountain roads in this county had a habit of disagreeing with GPs, and because he had learned over 27 years of riding that the map was always right, and the phone was sometimes right, and the difference mattered when you were on a switchback at elevation with no shoulder and a guardrail with opinions. He had not planned to stay more than 20 minutes. He was not thinking about anything except the route when he heard the voice from the next booth. He carried something privately that the patches did not say, and that he did not discuss with most people. A sister in Charlottesville, who had spent 4 years in a marriage that had done specific things to her before she found her way out of it. He had been too far away for too long during those 4 years, and the way he had been too far away was not geographic. It was the particular distance of a man who believed, or had told himself he believed, that it was not his place to intervene until he was asked. He had been asked, eventually. By then, it had cost his sister 2 years of recovery and a scar on her left hand that would not entirely fade. He did not make that kind of calculation anymore. He had 2 words and 4 more. He had heard the register. He knew what it meant. He picked up his phone. Before we get to what Hank did next, and every minute of this matters, subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments. It doesn't matter where you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this story travels. I read every single one. Now, back to the Silver Creek Diner, because the woman in the next booth had no idea that the man on the other side of that partition had just made a decision. And what that decision was going to look like by 4 o'clock that afternoon was something neither of them could have predicted. Her name was Teresa Lynn Howell, and she had lived on Birch Creek Road outside Branton for 9 years. 6 of them with a man named Dale Howell, 3 of them after he left. The 3 after ones built on the specific architecture of a woman who has learned to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, by accepting that it is always about to drop, and living around it. She was 41 years old. She worked part-time at the county library in Branton, 3 days a week, which was the right number of days because it got her out of the house and into a building with people, and gave her something she was good at. She had a way with reference questions. The patience to follow a thing to its answer rather than stopping at the nearest approximation, without requiring more of her than she had on the days when what she had was not very much. She had a son, Marcus, who was 11 years old, and who stayed with her mother in Staunton on the weeks when Teresa had reason to believe the drop was coming. Marcus knew why he went to Grandma's. He did not ask. He was 11 years old, and he had learned to read his mother's face the way children learn to read things that matter, with the complete attention of someone whose well-being depends on accuracy. Teresa had looked at his face once when he was coming back from Staunton and had seen what he already knew, and she had made herself a promise that night that she had been working to keep ever since. She had a habit that people who knew her recognized, but rarely mentioned. She planted things. Not metaphorically. Literally. Tomatoes in the side garden, herbs in the kitchen window boxes, a climbing rose on the fence she had trained over 3 seasons up the east side of the house. She had planted a dogwood in the front yard the spring after Dale left, and it had taken and it had bloomed 3 Aprils now, which was 3 more Aprils than some people had thought it would. Planting things was the specific habit of someone who was investing in a future they intended to be present for. It was also, on the bad days, proof that something had grown in her care and that the growing was hers. She had not filed a police report in 11 months. Not because nothing had happened in 11 months. Because after the 3rd report and the 3rd patience of the officer's voice conversation, and the 3rd document that went into the county system and produced nothing, she had decided that the energy of filing reports was energy she needed for other things. She was not resigned. She was strategic. She had started keeping her own records, dates, times, a description of each incident written in a small spiral notebook that lived in the locked glove compartment of her car. Because she had read somewhere that documentation mattered eventually, and she intended to be there for the eventually. She had called her friend Paula this morning, because Paula was the person she called when the weight of it was too much to carry quietly through the morning, and because she had gotten a text from Dale the previous night that said he would come by today and that they needed to talk. And the specific phrasing of it, not the words. The rhythm of the words was the rhythm that preceded the kind of visits that left marks, she explained, as something else. She had not meant for her voice to carry past the partition. She had not meant for anyone to hear. When she came out of the restroom 20 minutes later and slid back into her booth, the man in the next booth had gone. Darlene had refilled her coffee. There was a paper napkin folded under the mug with a phone number written on it in pen and 4 words in block capitals above the number. "You don't have to." She looked at it for a long time. She looked at the booth where the man had been, at the road map still open on the table, the coffee cup empty beside it. She looked at the number. She did not call it immediately. She drove home to Birch Creek Road, and she looked at the dogwood in the front yard, which was blooming now, the white flowers against the April sky. She went inside. She sat at the kitchen table. She looked at the notebook in her hand. She had gotten it from the glove compartment before she came in, and she looked at what was in it, and she thought about the evening that was coming and what it was likely to look like. She unfolded the napkin. She dialed. Hank Mercer answered on the second ring. He did not say, "How can I help?" He did not say, "Tell me everything." He said, "I'm here." She talked for 12 minutes. Not everything, not the whole 3 years, the shape of it, the weight of it, the specific this evening of it. The text that had come last night with the particular rhythm she had learned to read. The son who was already at his grandmother's in Staunton because she had sent him yesterday when she got the text. Which was how she always prepared. Which was a form of preparing that a woman should not have to know how to do. The dogwood in the front yard that she had planted the spring he left and that she was not willing to leave behind, which was one of the reasons she had not yet gone to Paula's or her mother's, which was the reason she was still in the house on Birch Creek Road at 11 in the morning talking to a stranger on a napkin phone number. Hank listened. He asked 3 questions, all of them specific. What time was he likely to come? Did she have anywhere she could be with the door locked before then? Was there anyone in her county she already trusted? She answered all 3. He said, "All right. You stay in the house. You lock the door. You call me if the time changes." She said, "I don't know who you are." He said, "Hank. Iron Ridge Brotherhood out of Harrisonburg. I'll have people there before 4. She was quiet for a moment. "Why?" she said, not suspiciously, with the genuine puzzlement of someone who has been told no by enough systems that yes from a stranger required a reason. He thought about his sister's hand. He thought about the scar that had not entirely faded. "Because I heard you this morning," he said, "and I was in the position to do something about it. So I'm going to." That was all. She locked the front door. He made 11 calls in the next 40 minutes, driving south on Route 11 with a phone on speaker, the mountain roads holding his attention with one half of his mind, while the other half worked through the logistics with the precision of a man who had organized moving parts before and knew what each piece needed to hear. He did not exaggerate. He told the situation plainly. He gave the address and the timeline and the one relevant fact that was all anyone needed. A woman alone. A man coming who had given her reason to be afraid. And a chapter that had a road between it and her that it could close before dark. The chapter closed it. They came in 2 groups, the way the Iron Ridge Brotherhood moved when speed mattered and formation didn't. The first group arriving at 247-7 bikes, turning onto Birch Creek Road and pulling into the gravel driveway at the White House with the blooming dogwood out front. The second group at 319. 8 more. Parking along the road's edge and in the driveway apron and the grass beside it, organized without instruction the way the brothers organized things that had been done before. Everyone knowing their position without a meeting to assign it. Hank was already there. He had arrived at 2:15, knocked, waited at the porch until Teresa opened the door with the particular expression of a woman who has been told something is coming and finds, when it arrives, that it is more real than the telling prepared her for. She had made coffee. He did not tell her she didn't have to. He took the mug. He sat at her kitchen table while she showed him the notebook, the dates, the times, the descriptions. 11 months of her own documentation, precise and consistent, the records of a woman who had been keeping her own case file because the official ones had not stayed open. He read it slowly. He looked up when he was finished. "This is good," he said. "This is what you need." She looked at him. "I know," she said. "I just didn't know if it was enough." "It's enough," he said. "Who do you have for an attorney?" She gave him a name. He made one more call, brief. A name and a request passed along the chapter's network to a member in Staunton who knew a family law attorney and who would have a call arranged before the end of the week. Then he closed his phone and put it on the table and drank the coffee she had made him. By 3:30 there were 19 motorcycles on Birch Creek Road. Not hidden, not aggressive. Parked in the driveway and along the road edge and in the grass, in the way that 19 motorcycles park when they have arrived somewhere and intend to be there. Visible from the road. Visible from the end of the driveway. Visible, specifically, to anyone turning onto Birch Creek Road and looking toward the white house with the blooming dogwood and the stone path and the climbing rose on the east fence that had taken 3 seasons to train into its shape. Teresa stood at the front window and looked at them. She had been watching that driveway for 3 years. From this window, from this angle, waiting for a truck she recognized to appear at the end of the road. She had watched it 100 times, and she had felt, each time, the specific compression of someone who has learned that what is coming whether she watches or not, and that watching is the only form of preparation she has. She watched now. The driveway was full of motorcycles. It looked, she thought, like something that had been answered. Dale Howell turned onto Birch Creek Road at 4:17 in the afternoon. He drove the first quarter mile in the usual way, unhurried. The truck moving at the speed of someone who is going somewhere he has been before and expects to find it the way he left it. He came around the bend where the road straightened toward the house, and he saw the driveway. He slowed. He did not stop. He came forward another 50 feet, slowly enough that the forward motion was barely motion, more the memory of motion. The truck coasting on whatever was left of its original intention. The driveway was full of motorcycles. The road edge was full of motorcycles. 19 of them, in the late April light, their chrome catching the afternoon sun, their riders standing or sitting along the fence line and the driveway edge, with the easy, unhurried presence of people who have been somewhere for a while and have not made any plans to leave. At the center of the driveway, between the motorcycles and the front porch, Hank Mercer was standing. He was not doing anything. He was standing with his arms at his sides and his eyes on the truck at the end of the driveway, with the specific quality of stillness that is not the stillness of waiting. It is the stillness of something already decided. Dale Howell sat in the truck for a moment. He looked at Hank. He looked at the 19 motorcycles. He looked at the house, where behind the front window a woman was standing with both hands at her sides, watching. He put the truck in reverse. He did not do it slowly. He backed down Birch Creek Road at the speed of a man who has understood something all at once and has only one response available to him. and he turned at the end of the road, and he was gone. The driveway was quiet. One of the men along the fence line said something low to the man beside him. Somebody else set down the coffee mug he had been holding and stretched his back. The afternoon went on being the afternoon. The dogwood, the climbing rose, the sound of a mockingbird in the oak at the back of the property, going through its repertoire in the specific, unhurried way of a bird, with no deadlines. The front door opened. Teresa came out onto the porch. She looked at 19 men standing in her driveway in the April light. Men who had ridden from Harrisonburg and Staunton and Waynesboro, and one from as far as Winchester, because a brother had called and said a woman needed people to be visible in her driveway before dark. She looked at Hank, who was still standing at the center of the driveway. She looked at the dogwood. She said nothing for a moment, because there was not a sentence in her that was going to be equal to what she was looking at, and she had enough respect for the moment not to offer it something less than it was. Then she said, "There's more coffee." Hank looked at her, the first full smile of the afternoon. "We'll take it," he said. The chapter attorney in Staunton made the call on Thursday. By the following Wednesday, Teresa Howell had a consultation scheduled and a file started. The documentation in the spiral notebook, 11 months of dates, times, and descriptions, was, as Hank had said, enough. It was, in the attorney's exact words, one of the most complete records he had seen from someone in her situation. And the case that grew from it moved with the speed that cases move when the documentation is complete, and the attorney is competent, and the person bringing the case has decided, finally, that she has been patient long enough. Dale Howell did not come back to Birch Creek Road. The dogwood bloomed again the following spring. Teresa was there to see it. Marcus was there to see it. Her mother drove over from Staunton for the afternoon, and they sat on the porch, and the April air was the April air, and the thing that had been wrong for 3 years had been replaced. Not all at once, but piece by piece, with things that were right. Hank Mercer passed through Branton twice more that year on Route 11 and stopped at the Silver Creek Diner both times, because the coffee was good, and because Darlene refilled without asking, and because some places are worth returning to when the road goes through them. He thought about his sister's hand. He thought about the 4 years he had not been there, and the specific form of not being there that had nothing to do with distance. He thought about a road map open on a table in a diner booth, and 2 words coming through vinyl that he could have let pass through. The way you let most things pass through. The way most people do, most of the time. Because the world is full of things that are not technically your business, and you cannot carry all of them. He had carried this one. He was going to keep carrying it, not as a weight, but as a thing he understood now about himself, that he was in the position to hear things, and that hearing them and doing nothing was a choice he was not willing to make again. He rode south on Route 11 both times, through the mountain fog and the morning light and the switchbacks that required the map rather than the phone. And he arrived in Roanoke, and he did what he had come to do, and he rode back. The road was the same road it had always been. He was not exactly the same man. Some people hear the words, and they wait. They think, "It's not my place." They think, "I don't know the whole story." They think, "There's probably someone better positioned to help." And sometimes those things are true. But on a Wednesday morning in April, in a diner booth on Route 11, Hank Mercer heard 6 words through a vinyl partition, and he did not wait to know the whole story. He knew enough. He knew the register. He had heard it before, in a voice he loved, when it was too late to do what he could have done. He was not too late this time. He made one call. 19 men stood in a driveway before dark. A woman watched a truck back down her road and keep going, and she said to herself, for the first time in 3 years, something that people say easily every day, and that she had not been able to say for a long time. She said, "It's going to be all right." She did not say it to anyone. She said it to the dogwood, because it was there, and because it had bloomed 3 springs without anyone's permission, and because some things grow anyway, in spite of everything, and that is the truest form of all right there is. If this story found you tonight, if you believe that one call, made at the right moment, can change everything, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. And drop a comment below. Have you ever made the call that changed something? Type "before dark" in the comments if this one reached you. I read every single one.